Yeah, I'm aware of the program in Detroit. And I would like to think that, speaking of Imam Saraj Wahaj, that he has adjusted his thinking. I know that in Imam W. Muhammad's lifetime, that the Imam did respond to an invitation of Imam Saraj Wahaj and his organization. At that time, I don't know if that organization is still functioning, but he did respond to it. And he made mention in his presentation, very brief presentation, of the circumstances that led to Imam Saraj Wahaj disassociating himself from Imam W. Deen Mohammed's leadership. And Imam said that he was happy to see him go for his own development and benefit for him, and also as a influence in our association. In Imam W. Muhammad's lifetime, I don't know that he ever invited Imam Saraj Wahaj to influence his following. Now, I have heard Imam Saraj, I know him. We've met on several occasions. He may not acknowledge me now, but in those years that I met him, he acknowledged me. He knew me in my role, and he told others of my role. Now, it may not be in his interest to do that now. Seems to me that he's found a receptivity within the order of hypocritical leaders that Imam W. Muhammad separated himself from, that had a strategy to outlast Imam Muhammad's influence and to commandeer authority over his people. It appears to me that that order has found use for Saraj Wahaj. And Saraj Wahaj has accepted that role. That's what it appears. So this opens a discussion. And the discussion is, it has to be asked and answered in this way. And I believe it has to be asked and answered by individuals in our community and as groups. Who legitimately represents the teaching of Imam W. Deen Muhammad? I think that question has to be asked. It has to be asked formally. Do the institutions presently, as they are constituted in our community, which includes the Muslim Journal, does it represent the thinking of Imam W. Deen Muhammad? That question has to be asked, and it has to be answered. To promote terrorism as a form of freedom fighting, is that the teaching of Imam W. Deen Muhammad? Because the Muslim Journal editor, she sent a message all around saying that the terrorists to one group is a freedom fighter to another. That's no different from saying that the decadent, immoral drug dealer that preys on his community is a drug dealer in one estimate, and in another estimate, he's a legitimate businessman. That's the argument. So that represents that kind of thinking is being promoted through an institution that says it represents Imam W. Deen Mohammed's thinking. Here is an institution, Masjid Wali Muhammad, which is associated with the history of our community as Temple Number 1, representing the first steps of our history as a people, representing the initial planning and teaching of Mr. W.D. Farad, and the establishment of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the leadership, and the preparation of the mind and spirit that was to become leader for all times for our people. Production of the mind and spirit of Imam W.D. Muhammad, which was produced from the womb of the Nation of Islam. So here's that institution going on record that it favors this person to interpret what is the proper understanding of the movement from Mr. W.D. Farad to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to Imam W. Deen Muhammad, that this person is the one to properly interpret that. So again, the question has to be asked, who legitimately represents the thinking, leadership, hopes, aspirations, planning, discipline of Imam W. Deen Mohammed's leadership? Who? Now, I can go to one statement that's on the historical record, just one. Not to mention, there are countless others, but I can go to one, where he said to his people, not to one person, not to a small group, not to a closed meeting, not to a leadership group only, but to his whole following on the occasion of the National Convention, which is to be understood as the annual gathering of our people and also the annual recognition by those people of who they support for leader. He said to that gathering that he has to acknowledge the man who has done more than any other person to help him in getting the correct picture of Islam and Imam W. Deen Muhammad to America and the world. Exact words. My son, Earl Abdulmalik Muhammad. So, did he ever recant that? Did he ever indicate to an individual or a group that is on record that he separated himself from me, or that I separated myself from him? Or is that just fantasy and illusion and scheming and strategy on the part of people that he disconnected himself with from a few years after he made that statement? So I ask you, who did he ask to announce to his followers that he decided to separate himself from that group? Who? The same person. I ask you again, did he ever recant that? Who recanted it? Who made the argument that it had been recanted? The same institutions that misrepresent him now. The only institution that I know of that has gone on record as wanting to influence its people to be against me is Masjid Wali Muhammad. The others just individuals, and the Muslim Journal as an institution. Two that have recently gone on record, public record, as supporting clearly influences and ideas that are antithetical and the opposite of Imam W. Deen Mohammed's teaching. Now, if you can't see that, if people can't see that clearly, then you just blind. You blinded. If you don't want to acknowledge it, then you're not truthful. And you can't be trusted. It's plain and clear. Imam W. Muhammad said of this person that's speaking to you right now, that you are a combination of me and my father. And then he said, but you didn't know my father. You were too young to have known him. He said, but I'm telling you that you know him better than most of his ministers. Which says what? That there was another feature of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that was more important to understand his work than what most of his ministers attended themselves to. Now, Saraj Wahaj was a minister of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was assistant minister in Temple number 7. I don't know if it was 7B or what it was in Brooklyn, but he was the minister of that temple. So he didn't separate himself from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He didn't ask to be distinguished from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's leadership. And so here is Imam W. Muhammad, the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the successor of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for the fulfillment of the interests of the Nation of Islam, saying that Earl Abdulmalik Muhammad is a combination of his father and himself. So I ask, who legitimately represents this leadership? The people have to ask it. The people have to answer it. And if you waffling and acting like you don't know, what help are you? Or you in doubt? I ain't sure, because that brother, he went to prison. Yeah, okay. Honorable Elijah Muhammad went to prison. Imam W. Deen Mohammed went to prison. Oh, well, they went to prison for righteous cause. You were a criminal. The United States Attorney, Assistant United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia that prosecuted my case called me personally through my attorney and said, Mr. Muhammad, we apologize to you. You shouldn't have done 1 day in prison. And I showed you all a few weeks ago where the governor of Virginia, the sitting governor, in a personal letter signed by him in his own hand, no stamp, with the seal of the state, restored all my rights as a citizen. These are some unprecedented things. Now, our people, we can't coerce or force them. There's no such thing. It's not cognizable in Islam. All we can do is present the evidence and appeal to their intelligence. But I'm like Imam Terenzo, who's speaking like this. That's the evidence. Even if we didn't have those things that I just mentioned as support, who's speaking like this? Say, well, and I've said this to you all before, and it's not a statement of ego or arrogance or anything, because I don't have that. That's not a part of who I am. If Imam W. Muhammad were alive now and with us now, he would not even address the audience. If people were asking him, he would point to me. What is the evidence of that? Ask any person who was in leadership in the time when he lived with us, when he was with us, and ask them if Imam W. Deen Mohammed, if you had invited him to your city and he informed you that he wasn't able to make it, who would you expect to get off that airplane? Who would you expect to see if you knew he wasn't going to be there? Answer if you're truthful. You wouldn't expect to see Yahya Abdullah. You wouldn't expect to see Qasim Ahmed. You wouldn't expect to see Abdul Karim Hassan. You wouldn't expect to see Fahim Shuaib. The only time you would expect to see them is if you invited them. If you invited Imam W. Deen Mohammed and he wasn't able to be there, you would expect to see Earl Abdulmalik Muhammad get off that airplane. It's a matter of being honest and truthful. But they can't be. Why? Because they conspired. And they're not going to reveal their hand in their conspiracy. And this is the truth of it. So I'm telling you all in a way that I haven't said it before. This is the first time I've talked like this. You all are witnesses to it. I've hinted it, but I haven't spoken this clearly to this matter. But these things have become crystallized in us so that we can address what's ahead of us. And I've been very patient with these leaders. I've watched them, listened to them, say all these ugly things about me. I haven't retaliated. Just responded to the truth of it when it came to me. But it's important that we make things clear and ask the questions as they should be asked and encourage our people to answer straight and honestly. And if you listen to the last 2 or 3 addresses that I've given and ask yourself, in what mind does it put you? Who and what are you reminded of? And you will have to answer, if you have any experience at all in this community, that you're reminded of Imam W. Deen Mohammed and his teaching. Do I look like I'm guessing? I stand on what I'm telling you with the angels as witnesses and bearing witness to their help, to their support. Because nothing that I have done while I was in prison or since I have been released from prison would have been possible except by Allah's help through his angels. Look at me, you don't see prison on me. You see a man prepared for leadership. And if you knew me 20 years ago, you saw the signs of it in me then. But the man I was then is not the man I am now. That man was preparing. This man is in place. And right now, I'm speaking to pioneer members that know what I'm saying is the truth. There are men and women in this class right now. And they had an expectation that this would continue. And they had a question. You know, it's natural to have that question. And they asked the Imam, either they asked him personally or they asked him through others. And the Imam answered them with an assurance. He told them, you will get a leader very much like me. He said, don't fret or be worried about what will happen after me. He said, Allah will show you who you should support. Clearly indicated that there would be one coming after him. Not some local leadership scheme. And if I have deviated 1 degree or even 1/10 of a degree from his teaching, show me. Show me. Show me where I had deviated. I haven't deviated any measure from his teaching. It is him in this moment. I told one of the imams, I said, no matter what we see, no matter what come before our eyes to distract us, we stay to our course, steady. Because they'll throw up all kinds of madness to get our attention. We stay on our course. Did you hear about what happened in this place? Did you hear about what happened in that place? Do you see who they got? We stay to our course. And not that it's such a big deal in the modern world right now, but if you stay to that course, you'll see the Red Sea part before you.